And welcome to part two of this Wrestle Talk edition on several different topics. TNA not having a drug policy, Eric Bishoff and his new blog. Details on that in part one. We'll emphasize it here in part two. But like I was saying in part one, get a clue, get these guys insured, and get them the coverage they need. Not impossible, right?
No, not impossible. In addition to that, they should be, I feel that they should be treated just like their northern cousins, if you will.
Well, no, a fan brought up a good point a couple days ago on a different podcast, Pro Wrestling Torch, established in 1987 for all your insider wrestling needs outside of us, pwtorch.com. Um, a fan of theirs said, well, how would a promoter go about getting the insurance because the work they do is high risk? And what insurance company would want to jump on that?
That is a good question.
What insurance company do you know that, hey, every 6 months Rey Mysterio is probably going to have something wrong with his knee?
Right, so yeah, let's ensure,
But I also think that's the scapegoat too. In the same breath, yeah, it's a loophole that might be high risk work, and the private insurance might be the only thing wrestlers have if they can afford it. If you're on the indie circuit, you damn well can't afford it, and you'll meet a lot of guys that tell you, I just go and don't worry about it. But that does raise a good point. Don't you think it's the truth, but it's also something WWE and TNA might be running with, where they wouldn't have been so eager to go with an insurance company's side, so to speak. But do you also think that they might be able to hide under that and say, well, we can't find anyone to insure them? But
yeah,
then again, they haven't really looked.
I can understand what you're getting at. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like a catch-22 in that fact. I mean, on one hand, hey, it's high risk work, so not many companies are going to want to insure them. On the other hand, the other guy could say, well, yeah, we can't really find anybody to insure them, so how can we insure them? And I don't know if there. I think that might be the only. That I think that is the defective sticking point. I think that there's nothing really that can be done. Because yeah, it is high risk. I mean, who would think that how do you insure something when one day it could you could perfectly find the scene. Hell, that earlier that day you could be fine. The same day, this massive injury that could that just out of blue happened didn't happen to the guy next to him.
Well, that's
You know
another
what I mean?
argument that we'll start here, and we won't take too much time, but just to touch on it, a lot of feedback from, well, if these wrestlers are dying like the ones you see now, like Lance Cade and Luna and all that, the ones that die 10, 20 years after they're actually contracted, is it still WWE's fault that you find out they still maintain an addiction to Percocets? Is it like the more or less what I'm asking? Is it the unspoken rule of whatever it takes for you to perform, do it, unless it becomes public knowledge, and then we hush it or speak out against it or fire you. But as long as
Like
we don't hear anything back, it's all kosher.
basically like a veritable don't act, don't tell in the wrestling world, right?
More or less, and can you argue that that's more or less what it is? Like, they can't be that fucking retarded.
No, they can't. I think, yeah, I would definitely think that's what it is. I mean, now, mind you, I'm sure you can contest, I'm
So
pretty much,
but ultimately, that if you're going to say that, then that requires you to make an assumption on this. Who do you blame? Because it's obviously not Vince McMahon because he's too smart to get his hands dirty like that. Vince McMahon ain't walking up to you and saying, hey, here's some steroids. Um,
right,
so who is it? Is it your trainers? Is it the corporate push where they're not really saying it, but they're not really not saying it. Like,
you see, it's all it all becomes a blame game. I mean, it's kind of it's a good question. It's one of those mysteries of wrestling that I'm not too sure if we'll ever know because yeah, you got there's made effect. You got I'm so beat up. I gotta be able to perform tonight. Otherwise, I might get booted, or I'm not gonna get much more screen time.
well, what I put in the last video cast, and what I thought I made a good point, and you take this one on, is I said since WWE hasn't said anything otherwise, so I'm going to assume that the original wellness policy that I researched before 2006 is still in effect, where drugs like marijuana only get you suspended and a fine, and what I was saying is by the time you pull a negative test, you've already made a month's worth of salary off of this company. So isn't it more than enough to cover the month they're going to give you off? So is it really a punishment at all? And why is one drug treated differently than the others? Whereas I wouldn't let anyone perform, even though I have my own opinions and views on marijuana use and its pain relieving capabilities. I wouldn't let anyone perform wrestling while high. Why is there like this difference? And do you think there is a difference between painkillers and herbal substances, if you will?
Well, I'm sure you know my stance on drugs as a whole as well.
Yeah. Well, your stance has nothing to do with the wrestling industry, because the wrestling industry is taking a turn for the worse.
Right. I'm just throwing that out there. I've been straight edge before straight edge was considered popular things to pump. But what I'm saying is that I don't see a difference. I've never saw a difference.
That's what I'm saying. There should be no difference if you're judging it on the ability to perform. If the underlying question is, can he perform? The answer should be no all across the board. And it shouldn't be one set of punishments for one set of drugs and a slap on the wrist for the other. If you're impaired, you're impaired. That's like getting a little bit of Wrestle Talk Show humor in here. That's like telling Scott Hall to drink a keg before he shows up.
yeah, indeed it is. I mean, now granted, now don't get me wrong here, is there the very few and far in between guys who can put on a hell of a show while high? Yes, you got your Rob Van Dam, for instance.
All right, and since we're touching on that, just summarize that, and then we'll go into the RVD real quick.
Pretty much, yes, he is a rarity, but he shouldn't be looked at the exception like, oh, he can wrestle high, so it should be fine.
And did you hear that other last bit of information, since we get into the RVD thing now, as to why the insiders think he's gone?
That I don't know.
Okay. Remember how, well, Wrestle Talk fans, let me just emphasize, what we were talking about was TNA went so far out of their way to accomplish a goal that they didn't even have to take the title off of RVD to do. They just have to either A, reinstate the title, or you play it vacant if you're going to play that way, play it fair to the champion, and make everybody lose until Bound for Glory, and then have RVD come back for that oh-so-much awaited rematch where he makes his return and gets his belt back. But what also surfaced this week is that RVD is one of those pay-per-plays, and they ran out of money.
Wow.
But here's what makes this story even more suspect, and it's a different video cast altogether, but I understand budgeting between your talent, and maybe I don't know all their financials, but they just bragged about Spike not being too thrilled and them wanting to see increased numbers, but that TNA corporate, which is we all know is Panda Energy and Dixie Carter's father, TNA corporate gave more money this quarter for talent. So how are they already broke?
Yeah, it makes you wonder. I mean, honestly.
Now I understand when you do these, you do them 6 month to a year, 90-day contracts, and you gotta like subtract that. They might not be broke; they're just broke on paper because all their money's committed. But you're gonna acquire a talent like Mick Foley, and then run out of money to pay him. You're gonna acquire a talent like RVD, push him as your world champion, and then make yourself look worse because you can't even afford to keep your world champion around.
Yeah,
It'd be one thing if he were mid-card and wasn't going for the title, but how the hell do you have this guy going for a title run, and then you gotta take him off of TV because you can't pay him?
Yeah, it's fucking retarded. It makes no damn sense. These people are kids. And speaking of TNA not making any sense, it's because TNA with it. It makes you wonder how their impact show is even still on.
And just making this statement so you can make a comment and a decent response time. According, like I said in part one, Wrestle Talk fans, according to Eric Bischoff, the fans we've surveyed, he's big to use the word we, that's his favorite word. The fans we've surveyed say they won a tournament. The numbers we're looking at, we see improvement in our ratings. What do you make of that?
Simply put, that's a joke because you know that syndicated show that replaced Impact, the one right after the pay-per-view?
Uh-huh.
That did better than Impact.
It scored better?
It scored better. It got, TNA usually gets a 1 point something or other, like usually nowhere near the 20s.
Yeah.
Yet this one did a 1 point like 28.
So what's the one represent? It's like 1 point for every 1,000 fans or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It's one for like every 100,000 or something. But we'll figure that out. But
Yeah.
what? And a lot of people, just to wrap up real quick, a lot of people seem to think that this has nothing to do with building the brand, that it's these wrestlers within the company and management talking to Dixie, trying not to make sure they're on the chopping block next week. That it's not about ratings from what some insiders have said. What do you make of, it's all about everybody whispering in Dixie Carter's ear, making sure they have a job for next week?
To be honest with you, I say shut the ear. Don't listen, because there's
Well, no. Do you think there's some truth to it, and then follow up with it?
Oh, well, yeah. I think there's probably some truth to it. I don't know how they're still alive as a company in terms of TV. So I must really jerk off to them.
Well, no, they'll just pull bad numbers this quarter, and they'll be off of TV for a while, and then they won't be able to make fun of ROH because they'll have to stream from their website too.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll probably happen.
I mean, that's what happens. If you don't get a TV deal, you got to buy the live stream on the internet. You know,
Yeah.
something Eric Bischoff should take a look at before he blogs. One analyst got it right. You should not drink and blog. You say things you're going to regret. But to summarize this, Wrestle Talk fans, in our last 30 seconds, we're interested to hear your feedback on the show. Again, our website is WrestleTalkshow, all one word, .webs.com. And feel free to drop us a line on anything we can suggest. We feel that Eric Bischoff is a waste of space. That will never change. Like we said, why is one wrestling company different than the other? And stay tuned.